What's up guys, my name is Clinton Norris and today we're going to be talking about the element of graduation. Now graduation is one of those end results that we absolutely need to be able to understand and control and create to survive in the salon environment. Now we know graduation is a buildup of length and weight, so meaning it's going to be shortest at the bottom hairline and getting longer towards the top of the bone structure. Here's a great example of that I'm going to create for you here in a little bit. So this graduation specifically is incredibly popular. It's a graduation that gets shorter towards the bottom, longer towards the top, but at the same time, it's also getting longer towards the face. Now it was greatly popularized by models and actresses from the 90s, and as the 90s is starting to come back to fruition, we're starting to see this haircut a lot more. So it's one of those haircuts that taught me a lot. It allowed me to control hair very low, and it doesn't have really a lot of room for mistakes or errors. So it taught me a lot to be able to recreate and control this over and over again, to test my skills and to push my comfort level. So today I'm going to walk you through a classic version of triangular graduation. I hope you enjoy it.
All right, so you can see here that I've done the 4 standard segments, center division line down the back. I went from apex to the mastoid division line, and then I took a natural parting on the front right side. So starting in the back, I'm going to take a vertical diagonal forward section. On the left hand side, I'm combing everything out of the way for control to be really clean. I'm going to move around and do the same thing on side number 2, vertical diagonal forward. Now this looks like quite a large section because it is. It's section 1 on either side, so it's actually 2 whole sections together. Now when I take this section, my goal is to have both sides over direct right towards the center. So from right to left, everything's going to go right to the middle. So I'm going to lower my elevation and I'm going to make a cutting line that's longer at the top and that's shorter towards the bottom. So this is going to create graduation, a slight buildup of weight from the bottom hairline to the top. Here I'm taking horizontal sections as a mini little cross check through my first 2 sections just to make sure there's some balance. Section number 1 is the most important section. So I'm going to rehydrate, we're going to check that out. All right, so I have a balance there. And I'm now going to separate that down the center. And that's going to give me side 1, side 2, and on my dominant side I'm going to start here and I'm going to take a vertical diagonal forward, moving up the division line slightly and wider towards the bottom. This is going to help me rotate up into a horizontal section later. Now section 2 is over directing backwards on top of section 1, so it gets longer towards the front. So if we look at this, it's getting longer towards the front as well as longer towards the top, creating triangular graduation. Moving up the division line slightly, section size needs to be the same so I can have a consistent amount of over direction. Now section 3 goes back to 2. I'm working in my hand, which is helping me lower my elevation as well. Again, getting longer towards the front and towards the top as well. Next section, I'm moving up the division line slightly, wider towards the bottom hairline. And I'm really wanting this to match with the jawline. So if you look at the jawline and this section, you can see that it's matching, and this is where I want to stop my rotating sections actually. Now my last section here that's rotating, I'm taking that down to the previous section and I'm over directing the hair slightly backwards, again getting longer towards the front. So longer towards the front and then also longer towards the top at the same time. Now a horizontal cross check is inspecting my over direction, so it's letting me know if I was consistent when I over directed the hair backwards, so we can have a consistency from the back of the bone structure all the way to the front of the bone structure as well. Last section here is inspecting my last little bit. Looks good to me, and now we're going to move over to side number 2. Now there's a slight bit of a change on side number 2. Since I'm working consistently with vertical diagonal forward sections, this section I need to put my fingertips down like I have here and my scissors up. This is going to allow me to be consistent with my section angle from side 1 to side 2. Now my next section, again, is a lot of repetition from side 1. Again, it's going to be a pretty much diagonal section here as we have rotated up the center division line. A quick horizontal cross check, just dusting to perfect the horizontal aspect of this haircut. Going all the way up to the top of this little panel here that I've worked so far, making sure it's consistent. I'm going to do a little bit of a spot check behind the ear to make sure there's a length balance. I'm going to rehydrate, and then I'm going to continue to move up the division line. And now you can see that I am matching my section angle, still horizontal diagonal forward. And that is helping me keep on track from side 1 to side 2, as well as maintain the shape. Quick little balance check from right to left there. Now I'm gonna comb and clip all this up out of the way just to make sure that I'm clean. Once I get to that round of the bone structure vertically, it's kind of difficult to comb the hair out of the way and keep it nice. So continuing to work now, diagonal forward, matching the section angle that I have there. I'm gonna continue to check for balance on both sides. Rehydrate, I'm gonna do a quick horizontal cross check. It's gonna inspect my over direction, make any tiny adjustments I can make there. Now, if I see a lot of irregularity horizontally here, I would go back into my sections, re-inspect that vertically, and take those sections again to make those adjustments. Here, it's a quick dust, making sure there's balance, and it looks great. So, building weight vertically and length horizontally. Now, as I work up, I'm not gonna pivot anymore, I'm not gonna rotate. What I'm gonna do is just take horizontal diagonal forward sections moving up. This way I'm really consistent with the shape that I'm creating. I'm working horizontally just to maintain a lot of weight vertically, since we are building up weight in this haircut. And now I'm gonna take down my second section in this top panel, staying consistent with the section size as well as the actual shape of the section. This is going to help me support my geometric shape getting longer towards the front. Now I'm waiting to move to the front until I have enough hair from the back to move forward so I can maintain a consistency instead of taking the section there, which I don't think I would have had enough hair to be able to maintain a consistency. Following the same geometric shape with my horizontal section through the front hairline. What's going to be different about the front is that I'm going to lower my elevation slightly just to preserve some density vertically in the haircut. So we know the lower I hold it, the heavier it's going to get. So as I work through this front hairline, you can see from the top of the ear to the top of the bone structure, there's not as much hair as there is in the back. So if I want to maintain density through the front, I need to change something. So in the back here, that's 45 degrees. Slight backwards over direction, and now that I'm on top of the ear, you can see my elevation slightly drops. This is going to protect some of the density moving vertically in the haircut. Now, again, working consistently, making sure that my section angle is the same, because that's really going to be my mirror, or it's going to be my clue that I'm going to utilize working forward. Again, going back through, making that check is there. Vertical cross check here, this allows me to see my elevation. Was my elevation consistent throughout each section? So utilizing that extra over direction there at the front to maintain some of that density. All right, so I got 2 more sections here, working through the top. Bone structure has changed. I'm over the parietal ridge now, so I need to be really, really careful that things aren't wrapping around the bone structure too much. Here's my last little bit working through the top here. And I'm gonna split that in half, a little too large of a section for me to control. And again, working horizontal diagonal forward, lowering my elevation. You can really see that lowered elevation there with those last couple sections, making sure there's some consistency all the way through the front hairline. Rehydrating for some control. I'm gonna comb that down to check it out, make sure there's a visible growth and length forward, and I'm gonna hop over to the other side. Now continuing with side number 2, nothing's going to change. I need to be really consistent with side number 1, moving over to side number 2. So working horizontal diagonal forward, I'm going to take down the right hand side as well, and I'm going to do a length balance almost every section that I take. Since I didn't work side 1, side 2, side 1, side 2 back and forth, and I decided to work one whole side at a time, I need to take those sections every time just to do a double check, making sure that the measurement from the right to the left is the same. Continuing to work horizontal, I now am going to have the ability to move into the front hairline because I have enough hair working from the top of the ear to the top of the bone structure here. So I'm going to continue, after I do this little check, to work through the front as well. Vertical cross check, just to make sure my elevation is consistent, dust anything, and making any little bit of changes that I can. Again, if it was bigger than this, I would go back through my sections and readjust it. All right, making a little quick check from side to side, and now moving into the front. So same horizontal diagonal forward. Again, for consistency on this side, I'm going to lower my elevation check both of those fronts just to make sure they're the same as far as length. And once those are good, I'm going to continue to work up through the top of the bone structure after a quick hydrate. So being consistent with the angle of my section is important. Again, if I ever get lost and I'm wondering if that is the right section angle, I can just look at a jawline. That's the first thing that we utilize to decide how steep this shape should be. So I enhanced her bone structure by following something that I really enjoyed about the doll's bone structure, which is her jawline. So if I had a guest and they had a jawline that we agreed that we loved and we wanted to enhance it, the shape of the haircut is going to draw a parallel to that. So if they notice the haircut being slightly forward, they'll notice other things in their bone structure being slightly diagonal forward. So people tend to draw their eyes to two parallels. So something I want to match, again, is her jawline. So I could reassess the shape just by looking at her jawline. So a quick cross-check vertically just to make sure that I'm being consistent as I work. Being that this is side number 2, I want to make sure that they look pretty similar from right to left. So working through that top, you can see my section size isn't too big. Around this time, we start getting a little greedy. We're almost done, so we tend to grab a little too much hair. So I want to make sure that I push back against that a little bit and maintain the section size that I need to for consistency. So there's our last section there, combing that down, and I'm gonna give you a quick little turnaround to see the end of the wet relationship of the haircut before we move into the blow dry. So I'm taking these diagonal sections. I'm gonna do a wrapping technique to get the hair really low and flat. So now that we've done the blow dry, we're gonna look at the shape again. So we're gonna go back through vertically, making sure that it's consistent from bottom to top, and dusting to perfect the shape of the haircut now that it's dry, because we know things are gonna change from wet to dry. So dusting little bits that I can, same elevation, same over direction is incredibly important here. If we start to move it off of where we cut it, then there's going to be a difference in our cutting line. It's going to look a little fuzzy, and we're going to maybe overcorrect and over-adjust some things that we shouldn't have. Now that I have balance from right to left, I've checked everything. What I'm going to do now is go through and adjust the outline. So we don't have any outline on this haircut yet. So we went through, we picked it up vertically, and we elevated that bottom hairline right there. So it's going to give us some inconsistency, and it's actually going to mirror what the hairline looks like. So as you see here, I'm doing two different methods really. One, I'm doing a chipping technique that you can see there, which is going through with just the ends of my scissor and adjusting any kind of lack of fluidity in the line. And then here, using the blunt side of my blade to go through and take off any major links. So going back and forth between those two methods of refinement is going to give me the best end result, because I can take off bigger pieces cutting blunt, and then I can refine that little bit with the ends of my scissor. Now you'll see here the hair gets chased out of the scissor a little bit because the hair is quite strong at the bottom hairline and it's pretty short there. So I need to go back over it a couple times just to make sure that that hair sits exactly where I want it to sit. And one major thing that you have to do over and over again is comb. You don't get it right the first time, so I have to comb and comb and comb just to make sure that I get that correct. And here's another piece of the hairline that I'm going to adjust. Where that ear is, there's a little sideburn, and so that reflected that in the outline here. So I'm going to take that off just to create some fluidity in the shape from the back to the front. I'm going to, again, do that little chipping method, going through just the ends of the hair there. It's really difficult to make a curved line behind the ear with the blunt side of the blade. So I'm going to go through and make sure that I can use just the ends of the scissor to create that little bit of a curve behind the ear. Now this takes some patience to go through. It is one of those things that it took me some time to finish and make sure that I felt good about. I wanted to give up so many times, but pushing myself forward and understanding that this is the way to do it to make the best end result. So again, going back and forth over and over again through that outline, combing the hair, provoking it just to see where it sits. And then the second part of the refinement is going to be now the interior. So we're happy with the exterior. Now we're going to go through the interior and we're going to slightly soften the last bit of where that weight builds up to. So as you notice, I'm not point cutting through all that graduation, just the surface above the round of the head. So I'm taking a little bit of a section from that curvature being the top of the occipital and the lower crown. So that's where it's going to be the heaviest and the longest. and that's where the weight builds up to and stops. So I'm going to take those horizontal sections and I'm going to soften just the very top of the graduation to give it some fluidity and some movement. So no matter where it sits, it's going to look good. So when she goes home as a guest, she shampoos, conditions her hair, uses her own product, and does her own blow dry. It's not going to be so detrimental that she blow dries it to the exact same spot that I cut it every time. Side number 2, horizontal sections from the occipital, high occipital, low crown up. I'm just pointing into the ends of the hair just to soften it. This is not thinning out hair. This is just softening the ends, keeping the same shape, keeping the same technique intact, just giving it a little bit of space so when it moves around, it has the ability to be softer and more fluid and not as stuck or rigid. Doing that last little section there, we're going to give you a quick turnaround of the triangular graduation. I hope you enjoy.